Hi there, I'm Scott Johnson, state organizer of Indiana 5051, and I'm also the lead architect behind an open source product called Poly, which is a tool for grassroots political activism, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So I've been running at the state level 5051 for Indiana for 5 months now. And during that time, I've become convinced of a few things. Nonviolent protests really do work. Grassroots activism is the only path forward. And yet it's so hard to do grassroots work that tooling is necessary. And here's what I mean by that. Grassroots work, by definition, is volunteer-driven. Now, the problem with volunteers, God love them, and I love my volunteers, is that they are just that, volunteers. And what that means is that they may be reliable, they may not be. They may have other events in their personal or professional lives that crop up. And you end up with a situation where the solution to whatever problem you face, I guarantee you, is out there, but you don't know where it is. You don't know what person has the right contact for the local police department to get you a permit, or who knows who at City Hall, or who's been talking to the press, and so on. So I started the Poly project with a basic thesis that you need to make everyone more effective by allowing resources to be shared. And at the heart of Poly is the idea of shared resources. So for example, one of the key features in Poly is a contact database. And you say, well, my phone's got a contact database. Sure. And my rebuttal to that is, yes, but your phone is your resource, and what we need is an our resource. So there is a very lightweight contacts facility. It's modeled on an iPhone or an Android contacts facility, with the difference being it exists in the cloud and is available to your organization. Okay? Certain fields are protected and are only available to the organization's leadership. Why? Because not everyone should know where an address exists, particularly if it's your address. But everyone should know where the phone number to contact someone from the press is. So let's talk about how we organize data. So at the very top of Poly is an organization. So this isn't software that you get as a person. It's software that your organization, whether it's Hamco Democrats or Carmel Democrats or Indivisible, Ohio gets, or whatever, right? But it's an organizational tool, right? It's groupware in the truest sense of old-fashioned groupware. And yes, I'm that old a software person that I can use the term groupware without, seeming sardonic. So an organization is just a group of users with a common political purpose or set of beliefs. Now, within an organization, there are a collection of users, and those are the people in the organization. And typically, those users have a management team or a leadership group. And then there's the rank and file. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes things are purely democratic, and we actually support that model as well, because we have built-in voting features. Now, one of the problems that we've seen in 5051, both nationally and locally here, is that how do you secure alignment across political purposes for a group of users, right? What are the codes of conduct? That's a really good question. So for example, for 5051 Indiana, we have one and only one rule of conduct. And that rule is simple. We adhere to the principles of nonviolence, right? That's the 5051 tenet. Everything in 5051 is nonviolent protesting. So when you sign up, you check a box saying, I agree to this. And can I guarantee that someone who checks that box will actually do that? Of course not. But at least it signals an intention. Okay. Now, then we start to look at the different functional things within an organization. And this includes things like roles, like who does what? That's actually a question, because in a volunteer organization, anyone can step up and say, I'm doing it. But at the same point, if everyone is in charge of something, no one is in charge of something. And it might not just be one person in charge of something. So we have a concept of an organizational role, which is essentially a function, right? Like, so for example, march and chant. If you're doing protests, somebody, might handle figuring out what the chants are and how the marches are organized, and how do you kick off when you have 20,000 people at a rally for a march to be organized. This is a non-trivial thing. I've been doing this for 5 months, and I don't think I've still solved that yet, or we've solved that yet, because it's certainly not just me. Another concept within an organization is a rule. So, and these rules can exist at the organization level or at the team level, because we believe that teams can have their own sets of rules. Like, and here's an example, and I'm pulling this obviously from corporate America, where I originated. A rule, let's say you have a meeting that starts at 7 o'clock, a recurring meeting that starts at 7 o'clock. People might show up at 7:10. So then the question becomes, do you recap the meeting for every person that shows up late, or do you simply let the meeting go on? That's actually a question. It's not a given. And because some of the recurring meetings we have might have 20 or 25 people in them. So people showing up at 7, you start the meeting at say 7:05. 3 more people show up at 7:10. That means you have to give a recap. And then a couple more people show up at 7:15. They have to give a recap, and so on. And the question is, how do you need to set an expectation for people as to what the rules of the organization are, and at least making it explicit tells them the consequences of their actions. So we've got organizations, we've got roles, we've got rules, we've got teams, we've got projects, right? So a team is a group of people. A project is a purpose. We have contacts, and we call those contact cards. And these are, name, phone number, description, title. We've also incorporated a very powerful networking concept called the Farley file. Now, the most effective politician in American history, without question, is Roosevelt. Roosevelt was elected 4 times as president, and one of the reasons he was because of James Farley, who was his campaign manager. And what James Farley did was he orchestrated the systematic capture of information about the people that Roosevelt had to interact with. Now, and I don't mean bad information, I mean little things like politician John Brown, his favorite cocktail is bourbon. Or press a person, Sophia von der Leyen, what she really likes is iced coffee. And the reason why those little things matter are when you're trying to establish a relationship, knowing a little bit about the person you're establishing the relationship and their preferences helps give that relationship an opening, right? People still have to have a valid purpose to talk, etc., but having a spot to start with, right? Knowing that you can say to someone, hey, I'm stopping by Starbucks and I know you like iced coffee, I'm going to bring you one. That's a great way to make someone feel like they're willing to open their door to you. And so we capture that kind of stuff, okay? And what we've done is we've systematized this because none of us are professional politicians, right? The real Pauls know how to do this. We don't. So we need some software tooling to help. And then similarly, contacts have attributes like this person's a VIP, this person's a politician, this person's a donor, this person might just need attention. We have the concept of vetting questions and vetting transcripts. These are to when someone joins up with a movement, you might want to find out who they are, what their skills are, and have that information logged so that someone else can take that person and transform them from a person into a specific role within an organization, a specific volunteer. We have the concept of political actions, which are you run a rally, what's the outcome you want of that rally? Now, the single biggest feature we've got is an event builder. And for us, for 5051, we are event politics. Now, the very first event that we ran was so hard to put together, it boggles my mind looking back at it. you create an event, you've got to get a date, you've got to get a time, you've got to find a place. You've then got to find speakers. Oh gosh, the speakers. And I love our speakers, but they're hard to wrangle. You've got to confirm with them. You've got to get a bio. You've got to get a speech. You've got to vet the speech, so on and so on and so on. And that whole process we have now built out where you can go and an event is defined by a web form. Once you have an event, you can then do what's called adding a slot to it. A slot is a place where a speaker might exist, or a musician, or a march. We can capture, we have a confirmation process by which a speaker is automatically sent an email so that you know that they actually know that their time slot is X to Y. Their speech should be this long, and they need to put it online here, and so on. We have a tool for registering musicians and knowing what they're about. And the reason we have musicians is when I first got into this, I called a good friend of mine, a man named David Rovics. David is a international folk singer and professional protester. And I asked him what makes protests work in Europe and that doesn't when they don't work in America. And his comment was simple: European protests have music. And ever since I had that conversation with him, we've had music at every single one of our protests, and I am incredibly indebted to David. And that's David Rovics, www.david, D-A-V-I-D, R-O-V-I-C-S.com. Hey, David. Missing you, brother. And there's a whole bunch of other features. We have things for saving messages out of our secure chats. We're working on some stuff to track ICE contacts and notifications. But I mean, overall, what we've built in Poly is a very powerful thing that is purpose-built for capturing information, managing information, and making the workflows in protesting so much easier. Thank you so much. If you're interested in this, go to poly.indiana5051.org, POLLY.indiana5051.org. The code for this is open source on GitHub. It's all developed in industry standard processes. I'm best of breed software developer, as is my very small team of one other person. Hi, Eric. And, we will, if you're interested in this for your organization, get in touch. And if you're interested in finding the code, it's on GitHub. My username is Fuzzy Group, and you'll find it. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the internet or at a protest.